The good news is the Braves got off to a history-making start in claiming Game 1 of the World Series. The bad news is it came with a price, as Charlie Morton was lost to an injury that will end his postseason. You're watching Battery Power, Cory McCartney, along with McAuley and Grant, a 6-2 Atlanta win. But the rotation was a clear area of strength for the Braves, where they had an edge. Now that's going to be tested with Morton now gone with a broken right fibula.
Yeah, and that's the kind of thing that you can ill afford at any time during the year, but most certainly right now, your most experienced postseason pitcher, the guy who was leading the charge for, again, a group you just pointed out that was going to be a strength for the Braves in this series and still could be. And you did win on the day he pitched, which I guess you can take away as kind of another silver lining to a victory in and of itself. I don't know if we're looking for silver linings just yet, but when it comes to injuries that end a player's season, I think that we'll take what we can get for the morale, if nothing else, for the Atlanta Braves. But kind of looking at this in the immediate aftermath, the Braves will take this Game 1 win. There's no two ways about that. The bullpen stepped up huge. They covered the innings when Charlie Morton had to leave. But, yeah, a fractured fibula on a line drive. He went back out there, Corey, like a true warrior and pitched through this. So he was probably thinking, hey, I've got a contusion. It's swelling up. I'm going to try to gut my way through, 4 or 5 innings, you figure anyway. But he was back out there doing his thing. And then finally, when he went out, and I just saw the reaction, they showed it in slow motion. I just got that feeling like if Charlie Morton is reacting in that kind of very visceral way, something is probably very wrong. And as it turned out, it was the x-rays that confirmed it not too long after that. He was out there pitching on a broken freaking leg. And that is unbelievable as far as the warrior in Charlie Morton. But for the Braves, it was all about finding a way to be, again, in that next man up scenario they found themselves in so many times. A.J. Minter came in and pitched 2 2/3 innings, gave the Braves some big-time relief. Luke Jackson bounced back big. That also was a huge thing for the Braves. And then you had Tyler Matzek and Will Smith, really the recipe for success for the Braves throughout October. So to make a long story short, we know what we just saw. How will this affect the Braves going forward? When and if Morton's turn in rotation comes up again? We'll find out in a few days, because the Braves are going to have a difficult decision to make.
Yeah, and I just am in awe of Morton here. I mean, think about this. That Yuli Gurriel comebacker was 102.4 miles an hour, hits off his shin. Then he stays in there, throws 16 more pitches, getting up to 95.9 mile an hour. I mean, it's just insane. If you think you're tough, Charlie Morton is tough, and he showed that here in Game 1. But there is a fallout, and it comes with one. I mean, what happens to his roster spot now? And then, of course, if his turn, as you mentioned, comes back up, what happens if this series goes 5 games? As far as the roster, I mean, we know it can't be Huascar Ynoa because he was pulled off the NLCS roster with injury. So he's done. Jacob Webb, who was on the NLCS roster, could be an option. There's a number of, pitching options. You think about Spencer Strider, Kyle Muller, Tuki Toussaint. There's all kinds of options. I think, maybe another righty in Webb, who was already on the postseason roster, makes a lot of sense there. But, I mean, when you look down the line, Game 4 was already going to be likely a bullpen game. So what happens if it does go to 5, Grant? Is it Kyle Wright that gets a start? Is it Drew Smyly? Does Max Fried go on short rest? I mean, this could be a moot conversation if somehow the Braves can pull off a sweep. But this could end up being a major storyline down the line in this series.
It could be, and I think you laid out a lot of the possibilities there pretty well in terms of who are the, usual suspects when you're thinking about who could you call on immediately. I think Jacob Webb probably makes the most sense in that he was on the NLCS roster. Got bumped off for Kyle Wright because you knew that bullpen game was looming. You figure that that's another multi-inning option. You also brought up Drew Smyly, who threw well against the Los Angeles Dodgers and had what I would say is the most important outing of his Braves career in the NLCS. You could be asking for him to do something like that again, to be that kind of bulk pitcher that helps you out in a bullpen game, especially if you have to go with back-to-back bullpen games, which could very well be the fate of the Braves in Game 4. And then, of course, it could be again in Game 5 if we're talking about the likelihood of that happening. I would say with this Astros team, you're not expecting to roll over them in 4 games. It would be incredibly nice. The Braves will take the sweep if they could get it. But you do have to have these contingencies planned for, and I'm sure Alex Anthopoulos, Brian Snitker, Rick Kranitz, and pretty much anybody else that can have meaningful input there are going to try to figure out the best move they can make to replace Charlie Morton. But much like we talked about with Ronald Acuna Jr., the same way we could say it, I guess, to a certain extent with Mike Soroka, because this is the second consecutive October that I think we could both sit here and say, and not be alone, boy, where would the Braves be if they had a healthy Mike Soroka right now?
Yeah.
They've had to already figure out ways to replace an integral, a key member of their rotation for 2 consecutive years. You just didn't really have losing Charlie Morton or another starting pitcher in your plans right now. Your contingencies probably not really built around thinking about your workhorse going down the way that he did. But it's baseball. Things happen, and the Braves are going to have to find a way to overcome and do so without Charlie Morton.
Yeah, we'll get into game 2 and Max Fried in a second here, but I almost feel like it's imperative that he, brings a lot of length to that game 2 start when you consider the bullpen covering 7 2/3,
Definitely.
including 2 2/3, as you mentioned, a career high 43 pitches from AJ Minter. So, obviously, imperative that Fried and Anderson deliver now with, and obviously with Minter there, having to cover so much today, it's going to really be a lot of pressure on Max Fried going into game 2. So let's get into that bullpen, which was huge the last 2 rounds. It was big yet again today, and that really starts with AJ Minter. Stepped in when Morton exits through, as I mentioned, 43 pitches, 3 strikeouts. The Astros did get to him for 1 run coming off of a fielder's choice off of Dansby Swanson's fielding error. But Minter, stranded 2 runners in scoring position, struck out Jordan Alvarez, struck out Alex Bregman. We've seen him. We saw this last year during the NLCS. He's shown an ability to come in different situations and absolutely thrive.
Yeah, postseason AJ Minter is just a totally different pitcher than we've seen, I think, at any time in his career. And whatever the deal is with that, however that has elevated his game, the Braves are certainly thankful for it. They needed it again tonight. The Astros did scratch across a run against him, but with Dansby Swanson, I think he could go out there and hit him 100 more of that ground ball, and you're probably going to end up with an inning-ending double play more times than not. Just didn't happen tonight. But minimizing that damage, getting out of those innings, and not allowing the Astros to really cash in on any of the opportunities they had. It was a great job by the bullpen. AJ Minter, though, I think was kind of the MVP of game 1 in terms of the pitching side anyway, for being able to come in there and give you a meaningful alternative to Charlie Morton, as opposed to, hey, we got to figure out a way to throw 4 or 5 different pitchers just to get through the middle frames and hope to have Jackson, Matzek, and Will Smith do what they've been doing. AJ Minter was the answer to a very difficult question for the Braves, which is who can step in for Charlie Morton in this game and give us the performance we need. He did it, and the other guys followed suit, and a great bounce back from Luke Jackson. It was big to see that. The Braves need a right-handed weapon to be able to complement having the 3 lefties and Minter, Matzek, and Will Smith, and Luke Jackson was that guy again, as he has been more times than not this year, even if his luck against the Dodgers wasn't the best.
Yeah, I love seeing that bounce back effort from him. I think that was huge. Obviously, Tyler Matzek was strong again. Will Smith did his thing. The Braves, they went over 10 strikeouts here, 7 of them coming from the bullpen. To put that into perspective, the Astros had the lowest strikeout rate during the regular season. They only had double-digit strikeouts twice during this postseason. So, a big effort there, just keeping these hitters off balance, and obviously shows the elite level of that this bullpen has had throughout this postseason. I don't know, what we would have expected with Jorge Soler being back in the leadoff spot from a guy that, hit 4 home runs in 12 games at leadoff in the regular season. No one had ever hit a leadoff home run as the first batter in game 1 of the World Series.
Yeah.
Until Jorge Soler. He wasn't alone in producing with the long ball there. Adam Duvall hit a laser beam of a home run in the 3rd inning that ultimately chased Framber Valdez after just a little over 2 innings. The Braves, just hit him all over the place, quite literally. All 9 starters end up on the night, though, with at least 1 hit. You had 3 guys with 2 hits. They had 12 hits in all, and half of them, Grant, came via that remade outfield. And the benefit of being in Houston is that all 4 of them get to hit. We know those guys have been so big for everything that's happened post All-Star break, and they showed out in a big way in game 1 of the World Series.
Yeah, you're counting on them. Losing Jorge Soler for a little while felt like it could be, as I said in the NLCS, a harbinger of things to come in a bad way, because you had the Dodgers waiting for you on the other side of that news. But hey, it was next man up. The Braves had Eddie Rosario come in and have a historically great NLCS to win the MVP with his 14 hits, and the only man to do it in fewer than 7 games in LCS history, I might add. So postseason series, Eddie Rosario had one for the ages. So Jorge Soler had to figure out a way to answer for that, right? So he leads off the World Series with a home run. First batter of the series, first man ever to do that. I knew it was going to be a short list if anyone had done it, but in fact, the list is Jorge Soler, and that's it. Braves tacked on runs in each of the first 3 innings to build a nice lead. You thought they were giving that to Charlie Morton, but as it turned out, not only was that lead important to just give your pitchers a little bit of breathing room, but it allowed the bullpen to come in, not trying to just keep the Astros from getting the tying run on base and having threats throughout the entire night. The Braves offense put them in a position to succeed, even if the news on Charlie Morton and the fact that you had to find a way to work without your starting pitcher wasn't what you wanted. The offense chipped in a big way, and I think that's going to be a trend throughout this series, or it needs to be a theme for the Braves throughout this series. Score early, score often, try to play out in front. It's very cliche. It's very obvious, but it was one of the big keys to the Braves win here in Game 1.
Yeah, and the outfield wasn't just coming through with the bats. I mean, we saw Eddie Rosario flashing the glove there and throwing Yuli Gurriel out at second in the 8th inning. Ended up being a huge play. The Braves absolutely jumped on Valdez. I mean, it obviously started with Soler's home run, but in all, they had 8 hard hit balls against him, topped by Riley at 115.8 miles an hour. He had a 70% ground ball rate during the regular season. In Game 1, just 2 outs via ground balls. Do want to mention the absurd night that Ozzie Albies had, by the way. He got on base 3 times, and all 3 of those were 83.1 mile an hour or less exit velocity, including 69.3 on what would be a fielding error. Speed kills, Grant, and speed thrills, and Ozzie Albies has speed.
Well, let me point out that not only was it the exit velocities that you wouldn't necessarily expect would be base hits, their line drives and the box score, as we say, but I don't know if Ozzie Albies had a combined 150 feet worth of distance on the 3 times that he reached base, but the speed was a big player in that. And Ozzie, when he's batting from the right side, he's the kind of guy that's usually going to have a multi-hit night, or it feels like he can anytime he's doing that more times than not, and getting those opportunities to swing it from that right side. I saw a great note from J.J. Cooper of Baseball America about Ozzie's sprint speed from the right-hand batter's box. It is elite, and that's a word we throw around a few different ways and with a few different meanings for this Braves team. But Ozzie Albies showed that one of the 5 tools that he has is that speed, and it can help spark a rally, and he was in the middle of stuff for the Braves. That's always a good sign.
Well, the Braves will look for a sweep in Houston on Wednesday night with Max Fried on the mound going against José Urquidy as Dusty Baker decides to push Luis Garcia back to get more rest. So he'll be on the mound at Truist Park when the series moves to Atlanta. Again, I mean, with Charlie Morton out, the bullpen, A.J. Minter in particular, covering so many innings, Max Fried is going to need to go deep in this game. Grant, what are you specifically looking for Max Fried in Game 2?
I think it's just making the adjustments to get himself a little bit more back in sync than he was against the Dodgers and Dodger Stadium in Game 5. It just didn't seem like he was quite settled in. And the Dodgers are a team that the more they see you and the more that they study, you can expect a lineup like that to be able to figure out a good game plan. I would expect the same thing from the Houston Astros, one of the best offenses in all of baseball. As you pointed out, they don't strike out a lot. So for Max Fried, it'll be about coming in with a game plan that might include a lot of ground balls himself. He's very adept at doing that. It's a big part of his success. He can strike guys out, but if he's getting the ball on the ground and doing so with great regularity, he can typically put up a good start and has done so many, many, many times for the Braves over the past couple of years. And they could use one big time, as you pointed out, with Charlie Morton down, with, I think, some uncertainty around how deep in a game Ian Anderson is going to go. That is a key for Max Fried, is give his club as many innings as he can. You figure A.J. Minter probably down for Game 2. He'll get that day, then the off day, and then I'm sure be available again come Game 3. But again, it is the World Series, so if A.J. Minter feels like he could come out there and get you a big out or 2, maybe you see him in Game 2. But I guess this all just circles back to, if Max Fried goes deep in the game, the Braves are able to do what they did tonight, jump out to a lead, you feel pretty good about their chances. And more times than not, Max Fried, every 5th day, has been a guy the Braves have turned to pick up a win. And I would expect that that's the kind of trend that Max Fried will very much be looking to tap into when he takes the mound in Houston for Game 2.
Yeah, I mean, you think about how great he was against, the Brewers and the LDS fans, 9 and 6 scoreless innings. Obviously, the Dodgers got to him for, 2 runs in Game 1 and then 5 in Game 5, chasing him after 4 2/3. So they need the Max Fried that was pitching against the Brewers big time. in this start, and the guy just sets the tone for him. Only two Astros have ever faced him before, and one of them is Zach Greinke, and I do not expect Zach Greinke to go grab a bat and come in and hit against Max Fried in Game 2 of the World Series. The other one's Marwin Gonzalez. And by the way, José Urquidy was roughed up by the Red Sox in starting Game 3 of the ALCS. Lasted just 1 2/3 inning, allowed 6 runs and 5 earned on 5 hits. The Braves have never faced him before. We talked about familiarity being a big topic when you think about these two sides because they haven't played each other since 2017. I think this start in particular for these two guys, this is going to be a big time opportunity for them to take advantage of hitters who have never seen either of them before.
Yeah, I think that can be a big factor for both pitchers. And when you look at what the Braves lineup will be doing, Eddie Rosario can slide back up to the top of the order. You figure Jorge Soler will hit probably in the middle. Maybe those two guys just flip-flop. That could be the case. But you wanted to give Soler the opportunity to hit leadoff against a lefty in Game 1, and it paid off in a big way. But, of course, Eddie Rosario was not to be denied. Another multi-hit performance for him. Just put him back at the top of the order. And, heck, just keep swinging the bat that you've been swinging all series long. If you're Rosario, I think he can set the tone as he has. And thinking about this win from a bigger picture, a historical perspective for the Braves, this was a World Series victory for the first time in 25 years and nearly 1 week. The last time they picked one up was Game 2 of the 1996 World Series with Greg Maddux as the winning pitcher. Then it was 8 consecutive World Series losses to the New York Yankees. We know what they did in Game 6, and we talked about the 99 series, which was a sweep for New York 3 years later. So breaking a long dry spell in October for the Braves, this is a big win. The loss of Charlie Morton, that's going to be something the Braves are going to have to deal with and make the best plans they can, not having him available for the rest of the series. But taking Game 1 is a big-time thing throughout the postseason. Teams that win Game 1, it seems like more times than not, they set the tone for their series. It seems pretty obvious, but it's just one of the keys to victory and perhaps just one of the stops on the road for the Braves as they look to bring home 3 more victories and win their first World Series in 26 years.
Yeah, and this opening win certainly came with some highs and lows, but as you mentioned, 3 more, and they've got themselves a championship. As the series continues, come along with the ride with us here on Battery Power. Get over to the Talking Chop YouTube page. Make sure you turn on notifications, alerts. That way you know every time we drop a new episode. I'm Cory McCartney. He's Grant McAuley. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in next time, Braves Country.